Welcome back to Cult Pop. I'm your host, Jim Hall, and today we've got a great show in store for you. Today we've got just a wonderful guest, Brom. He's a fantastic fantasy artist and a wonderful author. You might know him from one or both. You might know him as a fantastic artist or from his three new novels that he's got out. The newest we're going to talk about today is The Child Thief, and it's just an amazing reimagining of the whole Peter Pan tale. And it's dark and it's just absolutely amazing. And we're going to go right to Brom. Folks, we've got him for the whole show today. So we're going to talk about The Child Thief, his newest book, his art, and his past two novels. And we're just going to have great fun today. So Brom, thank you so much for being on the show today. I'm a big fan and I'm really glad you're taking the time to be on the show.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you guys having me on the show. It's always a nice opportunity to talk to the fans and friends about the work I do, so I appreciate it.
Yes, and I know your fans are absolutely going to love this show because we're going to talk in depth about your newest novel. We're going to talk a little bit about your two previous novels and your art, so fans can really get to know you and kind of get a little in-depth interview here. But first off, we're going to talk about The Child Thief, your amazing reimagining of Peter Pan. I was so happy because when I first picked the book up, I was a bit skeptical. I thought, wow, Peter Pan for Brom, this is kind of odd. But wow, did you just really knock this one out of the park. Just a great reimagining. Peter Pan is a darker, I don't know if I'd say sinister, but Peter Pan isn't the happy little ageless wonder. He's a mischievous kind of a person looking to take care of his own needs kind of guy, and just amazing what you've written here. Why don't you tell the folks at home how you reimagined and tell us a little bit about The Child Thief?
Well, first of all, thank you for the compliments. I appreciate that. You know, it's always when you write, you write what sounds right to you and what you enjoy, but you're never sure if what you're writing is going to translate, if people are going to get from it what you're putting into it, and it's very rewarding when people do, in fact, get the message that you're trying to put across. So I appreciate your compliments. I think, I mean, you sort of summed it up. It is indeed a nightmarish retelling of Peter Pan, but also, as you mentioned, you know, the original Peter Pan is quite dark in itself. So in many ways, it's not so much that my version's darker, it's more, I think, the way it's presented. I think that the easiest way to illustrate that, if you don't mind, I'm going to read a quick passage out of the afterword of my book, where I discuss some of my influences from the original Peter Pan. So let me find the passage here. Take just one second. So, I mean, like so many of us, we've grown up on the Disney version of Peter Pan, which in itself is wonderful, but I think it strays quite away from again, so much of the darkness of the original Peter Pan, which in my eyes makes it's so interesting. As with so many children's novels and material, especially earlier on, they were often cautionary tales, or they had deep moralities to them, or often warning messages. But so I had a chance to read through one of the earlier versions of Peter Pan that had not been sanitized or watered down. And I actually believe several of these lines have made it through the current version, but this line in particular really struck home with me. It's here's a quote from the original Peter Pan. "The boys on the island vary, of course, in numbers according as they get killed and so on. And when they seem to be growing up, which is against the rules, Peter thins them out." Thins them out. Well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
You know, it could mean so many different things. You know, does he kill them himself? Does he just put them in such peril that they, you know, get killed? Or does he send them away somewhere? So I started thinking about that quite a bit. But there's a few other things. Again, so much of this is already in Peter Pan, but it's just hidden beneath his beautiful lyrical prose. There are several chapters where he talks about I guess the high body count in Peter Pan, all the bloodletting, which I have no problem with, but I think when I read books like that, I long to see them put in a more adult context. There are several lines where, I'm reading here, it goes, let's see, Much more intriguing to me is the murderous group of children, the Lost Boys. With them, Peter Pan has turned bloodletting into sport, has taught them not only to kill without conscience or remorse, but also to have a damn good time doing it. At one point, the boys proudly debate the number of pirates they've just slaughtered. Was it 15 or 17? So to me, I started imagining that again once you remove the lyrical prose and you think about these children that Peter Pan has essentially kidnapped and brought to this island and trained to fight and turned fighting and killing into a game. And even though they're pirates and they're caricatured, they're essentially human beings. They're men on a ship, whatever their motivations. And these children have gone in there and have slaughtered, dozens each, and they have they're actually competing on who can kill the most. So it was just such rich material. I couldn't. I had so many ideas of what to do with it. I couldn't wait to dig in. So that was sort of my starting point for The Child Thief.
Well, when I read through the book, I kind of went back after I read your telling and kind of looked at some of the old Peter Pan after some of the comments you just read, because it got me thinking, wow, okay, was it really? I don't remember it being that dark. And then, yeah, even the fact that Peter Pan comes into these kids' rooms at night and kind of kidnaps them, that in itself is kind of creepy. And if you look at it in deeper sense, it's just kind of off-putting a little ways. So after reading what you had to say about it, I did see how it was a fertile story to grab and really twist into some of the darker elements. And I kind of want to, without giving too much of the novel away, you want to sell the book, but I loved in the opening sequences when we meet a character, Nick, that's kind of a young street kid. He's stolen some drugs and he's kind of living homelessly and just a hard life. And then he's about to get the hell knocked out of him when these people catch up to him that want him for these drugs. And Peter Pan comes and just has no problem knocking these people around. And he's already, just right at the beginning of the book, you show that not only is he skilled in the fighting and all that, but he's a manipulator, because right from the beginning, he's manipulating Nick into being his friend. He knows he's lonely and feels totally vulnerable and all that. So Peter Pan's also very much a schemer in your novel. He's kind of a worldly person. He's got his youth and everything, but he's very much a schemer. Do you agree with my thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, Peter Pan's a very amoral character, and sometimes his scheming is conscious, and sometimes it's not, because he's motivated by what he thinks is right. So, and I think even that's sort of the fascination with the original Peter Pan is he thinks he's bringing these kids to a better world. In my version, The Child Thief, these are children that are abused, they're runaways, and Peter Pan seeks out these damaged children, and he thinks he's bringing them to a place where they will have a better life, a more exciting life. And in his mind, anything that gets in the way of that, and especially adults, which he despises, they don't matter. So he does. It's not even like he needs to justify that maybe he has to kill a few people to save somebody else or put somebody in in grave peril for the greater outcome of his goals.
Now, one of the things I love about The Child Thief is your wonderful art that accompanies the book. And for a lot of people that are going to say, wow, this book really sounds intriguing, if they don't know you as an artist and they pick up the book and say, wow, what a fantastic novel, what a treat they're going to be in store for, because about every chapter or so, you have a beautiful drawing of some sort to highlight part of the story. And then in the center of the book, you have all the main characters beautifully painted and just absolutely amazing. And you're just a renowned artist of fantasy and all types of art, but you're absolutely renowned. And so here you write this wonderful book, and I kind of wanted to ask, when it comes to The Child Thief or any of your books, do you feel that you come at a story differently than a lot of writers would because of your talent in painting, in drawing, and things like that? Does a story sometimes generate itself maybe in a picture or painting first, or do you find that you write like a lot of other authors would?
Most certainly. I mean, again, thank you very much for the compliments on my work. I appreciate that. I see things very visually. it's been very interesting because what usually happens is I'll have an idea and I'll start writing, and as I write I see these visual images, and then I'll go and sketch the characters, and I'll take, it's like the two work together. There are certain things that come to my imagination when I'm writing, and then when I go to draw and paint them, I discover new things in the drawings and paintings that then go into the writing. So it's almost the two support each other very well. But most certainly, I feel I've always been telling stories, either with pictures or with words. Even when I'm just painting, there's usually a story behind the pictures. There's a narrative going on in the painting. So to finally be able to get the writing to a level where the two complemented each other was very creatively gratifying. The pictures not only helped bring the writing to life, but the writing was a chance for me to take these characters that I love to create and have them walking around and interacting and coming to life as well. So I feel, that is sort of what, I guess, the uniqueness of what I bring to a book. Every author's looking for sort of their niche, and by bringing the two skills together, it allows me to hopefully flesh out a world in a way that maybe an author that doesn't paint might not be able to. And also, I tend to write things that I enjoy painting, so in that way it's a pleasure as well.
Well, I've got to tell you that I was a big fan of your work from the old days when you were just when you were a painter, illustrator, and all of that. And then I was fortunate enough to pick up your first book, Plucker, and then The Devil's Rose also, which is a really amazing book. But they were great books in and of themselves, but they were a lot smaller, and they were almost what you'd call an illustrated novel. The Child Thief is really amazing because now you can see where you've grown now into your third book, and this is just a fantastic novel, absolutely fantastic novel, but it's just wonderful to have these wonderful paintings and drawings inside. And I've got to recommend for the folks at home, when you pick up The Child's Thief, if you're one that just wants to read it first and then wait to take a look at the paintings, go ahead and do that, but then get to the paintings. And the painting you're imagining of Peter is amazing. The Troll and the Reverend are two of my favorite pieces I've ever seen. They're just absolutely amazing, Brom, and I just really want to tell you, I think your fans are really absolutely going to love it. And I think you're going to gain a lot of new fans from reading the book and then discovering your art through the book.
Well, thank you.
Now, we've talked a little bit about The Child Thief. Do you want to tell a little bit about the story? How comfortable are you in divulging a little bit about your story and telling the folks at home, give them a little something to want to go out and purchase The Child Thief?
Oh, yes, most certainly. Even though I'm making a lot of references to Peter Pan here, my goal was to create my own story, my own Peter, if you will. The story it starts out in its modern day New York, and it focuses on a young runaway named Nick, and he gets himself into basically a lot of trouble with a drug dealer situation in Brooklyn, and he's fleeing these drug dealers, and the story focuses on Peter Pan basically helping him and at the same time in a way preying on him to seduce him and encourage him to come to his island. To back up a little bit, and this will be revealed throughout the story, is I played a lot on mixing the Peter Pan mythology with old Scottish and Celtic and folk tales and mythologies from European, English, Irish, a lot of even Arthurian mythology. A lot of mythologies that James Barrie himself was inspired by to do the original Peter Pan. It's fascinating in all the fairy tale. There are actually many islands where people don't grow up, they don't age, where disease and sicknesses don't exist. So it was fascinating to discover these as I was writing the book and combining them. So I sort of mixed the Neverland mythology with, again, with the Arthurian mythology, the Lady of the Lake, Avalon. And I played on the fact that with Neverland and Avalon sort of being a similar type of place, they drifted away back when Christianity came to Europe, and the pagans were pushed out, and the people stopped believing in the pagan tales. The island drifted away, and it ended up in the Americas. And this was before any of the first European settlers get there. And at that point, everything is good for them. But eventually, as the European settlers start coming to America, a group of pilgrims basically become marooned in Neverland. And this is the start of the plot on the island of Everland, because the pilgrims are stranded there, and they think that the fairy folk are all demons and devils, and of course the fairy folk think that the pilgrims and the English soldiers are all demons and devils. So there's sort of a conflict going there, and Peter's stuck in the middle of it. So Peter is essentially going to the Manhattan. This war has been going on for hundreds of years, and he is kidnapping children and seducing them with talks of adventure, and from his perspective, it is fighting and killing is indeed almost a sport, to come fight for him. And
really it's a war, and he's recruiting new soldiers.
He is, yes, exactly. And so the plot sort of evolves from there. It involves basically a lot from Nick's point of view, the child that I mentioned that is seduced in the beginning, and how he's sort of sees through Peter Pan's guise to some degree. So we see a lot from his perspective of, he's sort of a modern day view of this world gone crazy. And then the story progresses as everything basically comes to a head.
Yeah, I absolutely love the book, Brom, and I really loved Nick, because you just said it. Nick wasn't, at first he was really taken in by Peter's promises and stories and all this potential adventure, but Nick wasn't really that foolish, and he really kind of became his own character, and he's absolutely amazing to follow also throughout the book. So you've just done a wonderful job with the novel, and I really want to encourage people to go out and buy it. But while we still have some time, if it's all right with you, I'd like to let people know who may not be familiar with two of your previous novels, if that's okay. I'd like to talk a little bit about The Devil's Rose and Plucker, your first two novels. Let's talk about Devil's Rose. That came out a couple of years ago, and that's another amazing. Now, this is a great story. All three novels are great stories, but the first two are so lavishly illustrated and painted that you really, if you want to get an idea of Brom's art and how majestic and wonderful it is, this new novel is also like that, amazing paintings and sketches, but the first two are absolutely beautifully illustrated novels. So folks at home, I recommend you go pick them up. But Brom, why don't you tell folks a little bit, general synopsis of The Devil's Rose?
Well, the Plucker was my first illustrated novel, and The Devil's Rose was my second one. I think I often describe it as a romantic western set in hell. It focuses on a Texas Ranger who has died, and he's gone to hell. And he's gone to hell for something he did to a woman that he loved, that he feels incredible remorse and regret for. So to try to earn redemption, he's working for the devil as a bounty hunter, chasing down escaped souls. He knows in his heart that this is an incredible evil he's contributing to, but he's willing to do anything to try to redeem himself and be able to go and find Rose, who, again, he was responsible for her dying. She's stuck in limbo somewhere. So the story follows his adventures as he tries to track down some souls, and there's one soul in particular that is of particular interest to the devil, and the devil basically has told him if he can bring this soul in, that he can indeed be free to roam limbo. So that's the synopsis in a nutshell there.
Yeah, it's an amazing book, and the cover is eye-catching, and you'll be happy to know just locally I was out looking for your books while I was around this weekend just to see that they're out there, and The Devil's Rose was right next to The Child Thief. They're still available out there, so folks at home, when you see this on TV, you're either going to be able to get them at your local bookstore or order them online, but there's some really amazing books. And your first novel, The Plucker, was really, really a cool story, and almost it's not quite a child's story, but it kind of is. It's kind of a child's tale or an adult's tale where a kind of a forgotten toy kind of has an amazing adventure. Let's talk a little bit about that one.
Yeah, I often describe that as a wicked children's book for adults. And it is, I've always liked illustrated books, and most illustrated novels tend to end up in the children's section. As a matter of fact, when I first started trying to get these books published, the Plucker, I had a lot of good response to the material, but most of the publishers felt the material was too, well, I should say they feel illustrated books should be for children only. And to me, what was interesting and what I wanted to do was to bring illustrated novels into the realm of adults, because again, that's what I personally enjoy. So there is a tendency for a little confusion when people pick up this book, especially since it is dealing with toys and childhood fears, to think it is for children, but is indeed an adult book. This book in particular focuses on toy abandonment issues, which sounds kind of funny, but the last chapter in Winnie the Pooh, where Christopher Robin is going off to boarding school, the toys all sort of gathered around, and they're wondering what's going to happen to them now that Christopher Robin is gone. And that always stuck with me. I always wondered what indeed did happen to them. Did they end up in an attic in a box somewhere? So this story starts out dealing with some of those issues. The toys, when Thomas, the child, no longer likes them, get put into the underbed. Part of my fascination with children's material, as with the Child Thief and the Plucker, is there's such wonderful stories written for children. But my fascination, again, is I want to see how those stories would be if they were real, if they were gritty, if there was this intense realism. So that was my goal with both The Child Thief and with The Plucker. The Plucker is dealing from the toy's point of view. He's put in a position where there's basically monsters under the bed that are after his child. And even though the child has abandoned him, he's put in a position where he's the one that might be able to save the child. And by telling this, going deep into his emotional and his conflicts and making it gritty and real and dealing with death from the perspective of a toy fascinated me as an author. And so my hopes are that people that read it will also find this perspective, this adult perspective on traditional childhood material would be interesting.
Well, it was another amazing book. I think you knocked that one out of the park also. I really loved it, and I highly recommend it for my viewers to go pick that up along with The Child Thief. But Brom, I would be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about your art. You've got so many fans from your fantasy art, from your TSR days, the World of Warcraft, and all the other stuff you've done. I wondered if you wouldn't mind bringing folks up to date on some of the art you might be doing now. Let folks know about your wonderful past art and maybe what's to come from you.
Sure. I've always drawn monsters since I was, as long as I can remember, 2 years old or 3 years old. And I often get that question. It's like, why do you paint dark things? And it's not something I consciously think about. It's just what I find to be interesting. I often make the point that if you asked a group of school children to draw or paint a toaster, they wouldn't be interested. They'd be like, who wants to paint a toaster? But if you ask those same group of children to paint a wicked toaster or an evil toaster, instantly it becomes interesting. And not only that, instantly it becomes interesting to see. I would like to see the evil toaster all these kids come up with. I think there's just some inherent drama in darkness and conflict. So personally, that's what I guess tends to draw me towards it. I think there's also a certain aesthetic. You mix, the darkness, especially when it's mixed with maybe something that's beautiful. It instantly creates, again, a bit of uncomfortableness that fascinates me. But so I've always drawn and painted things that I guess you consider a bit dark. I ended up going to a 2-year commercial school that did not teach drawing and painting, but it really pushed me into a commercial direction. So I spent probably the first 4 years of my career painting photoreal product renderings, Coke cups and whatnot, and just about died creatively from it. I mean, at first it was very exciting to be able to do illustration for a living, but there was a point there where I just, if I didn't get into doing what I enjoyed doing, I was just going to quit art altogether. But fortunately, I had a break working for TSR, the gaming company that does Dungeons and Dragons. I came on board with some wonderful, talented artists. Clyde Caldwell, Jeff Easley, Larry Elmore, and Keith Parkinson were still in the Lake Geneva area at the time. And it was such a great environment to learn and to grow as an artist. So I spent 4 years there. And since that time, after I left TSR, I've pretty much have worked in all facets of the genre, from film to books to games, both role-playing and video games. Over the years, from cards, book covers, you name it, there gets to be a point, I think, with artists where you, at some point, really want to do your own visions. And part of that is why the writing has come out so much, is that was a way for me to get to paint what I wanted to paint by writing things that were, in a way, wrapped around my paintings. So that's why, as we were talking earlier, the first two books were illustrated novels where you had prose on one page and then pictures on the other page, so almost a painting on every page. The Child Thief was, in a sense, I wanted to see if I could write a book that was in fact prose based. Even though there's a good handful of drawings and paintings in there, it's 500 pages of text with about 30 images throughout it. I'm getting a little off track there, but back to the painting.
Well, Brom, before you get going here, I'm actually, it's unbelievable, but we're running low on time here, and I want you to remind folks that they can take a look at all your wonderful art at your website, and you have a wonderful gallery, but also some art up for sale. So we've got about a minute left. Why don't you tell the folks at home about your website?
My website is bromart.com, and that's bromart, one word, .com. Essentially there I try to update people on the latest projects I'm doing. I have samples of the art from all my illustrated novels, as well as the paintings throughout the career. So if you're interested in learning more, please come visit me.
Okay, Brom, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. As I said, I'm a huge fan of your work. I am really, really pleased that you took the time to be on today. I really want to congratulate you. I think your newest book is absolutely amazing, and I loved your past two novels. I wish you continued success, and I thank you again for being on the show. And next time you have another novel, please contact us, or I'll contact you, and we'd love to have you on again.
Most certainly. Well, it's been a real pleasure, and thank you very much for the interview. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Well, folks, you've been watching Cult Pop. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you missed anything on the show today, you can go to the website, www.cult-pop.com, and you can rewatch this entire episode, or just jump right over to Brom's website and take a look at all of his amazing stuff. Thank you so much for watching today. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.